So next we have a panel discussion that is titled Fostering Authentic Partnerships with Older Australians for Co-Designing Their Care Journey. So can I please have on stage Karen Harrison, Samantha Edmonds and Beverly Bake, please. So I'll start by introducing Karen Harrison. She is our moderator today and is the National Manager, Collaborative Care Redesign for Calvary. So Karen has a clinical background with extensive experience in clinical redesign and integrated care. So we also have Samantha Edmonds, Director Policy and Systemic Advocacy, Persons Advocacy Network, or OPAN. So Samantha has extensive knowledge and experience in policy, advocacy, human rights, and a strong commitment to inclusive aged care. And last but not least, we have Beverly Bake, who is the President of the National Older Women's Network. Beverly has served as the chair since in New South Wales since 2018, and she served as the President of the Federation of Parents and Citizens Association in New South Wales, advocating for parents for students in public schools. So without any further ado, I would like to hand over to our panel. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm glad I didn't take too much time memorising your bios. But I'm hoping you're enjoying the session this afternoon, and I certainly had a lovely lunch with my two new friends. So I'm going to ask both Sam and Beverly to give you a little bit of who they are. We heard their bio, but a little bit about who you are and why you have so much passion and excitement around authentic partnerships and co-designing with older people.
Oh no, see, now we're arguing who's going to go first. So obviously Older Persons Advocacy Network, our bread and butter is the rights of older people and the lifting up the voices of older people, and co-design is about listening to those voices of older people. So we do it in a lot of different ways, from, I'm going to call it simple, but it's not, from when our advocate is first contacted by an older person, the older person decides what solution and outcome they want from that event in addressing their issue. So from that level right up to the work I do, which is listening to all those issues and then forming what our representation to government might be. Because co-design can be about anything. It doesn't have to just be about a service or a program. It can be a policy, it can be a document, it can be a submission. You can use co-design across everything. And so, you know, we take that very literally and make sure we do it. We also have a national older persons reference group, which is 35 people aged from 50 to 95 now, who we work with collaboratively on lots of our submissions, policy work, etc. We've also, 2 years ago, co-designed a co-design framework for older people. So we've developed, and it's online on our website, and it's a tool that they can use to see, is this co-design something I want to be involved with? Is this co-design actually does this co-design process actually tick all the boxes that should be ticked when you're doing co-design? So that was a fantastic process, and out of that we also trained a big portion of our staff in how to do co-design as well, because we're so passionate about it, and I'm really passionate about it because I don't think we can get solutions if we don't involve the people those solutions are going to impact on. They're the ones that should be driving the service, not everyone else, so that's my passion.
Well, that's a good enough reason to have you on the panel. Beverly.
I'm the President of the National Older Women's Network. Sorry, my voice has decided it's taking a holiday. We were established 40 years ago, and everything we do is co-design. The same as any association, you have to work with your members, otherwise you are a wild card. So everything we do is co-design. Nothing goes forward from the organisation that does not have the agreement. And we try to operate by resolution rather than by yes or no votes. So it's resolved that this is the way we will go. It's resolved this is what we want to do. And that's how we present on everything that we do. Everything that we have done has been through the mill. It's been debated, negotiated, worked on, learnt about as we move forward. So co-design is absolutely fundamental to everything that we do. And if you look at life, it's about everything that you do. Within families, it doesn't matter who thinks they're head of the household. We all know it's a negotiation. As a grandparent, I can tell you, negotiation kicks into high gear with grandkids. So it really is that negotiation, and it's based on one of the most important things as human beings we can have, and that's dignity. It's respect and dignity. It's not being treated as if you can be done unto. It is something that we work together on.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a lot of wealth, knowledge and experience in co-design, definitely. We've got a little bit of a movie clip that we're going to play you now, just to give you a little bit of a taster of what co-design looks like in the aged care space. Hopefully our colleagues at the IT desk are going to magically press some buttons and then it will magically appear with really clear audio. The clip is some work that's happening in Calvary Care, which is where I'm from, and it's from a co-design process that's been happening in one of our residential aged care facilities, and it's based on a model of care, looking at care for older people. So luckily it's got captions as well. So no audio? Does lose a little bit without the audio, but hopefully, hopefully the captions are helping to capture. So this is our person-centred model of care that encompasses personhood, environment, activity and relationships and safe care, and it's a principle-based model that has 24 principles. This is our Chief Medical Advisor who's saying that co-design is our preferred method for implementation of this model. This is a co-design group with our residents at St Paul's facility, and they're talking about what's working well in their home, what's not working so well, and then there's a process of talking through what options they might like to see to improve the arrangements and how it's working. The solutions that they came up with were varied. They weren't big high-tech solutions. They were very much, as Beverly mentioned, centred around personhood, around respect, dignity, wanting their care workers to experience what it was like to be lifted in a hoist before they lift themselves in the hoist. Big name badges, so they could actually see who they were talking to. These solutions that were co-designed are not expensive, but they're genuine, and the partnership is authentic, and working with our residents to ensure that they're in control of their lives is really at the essence of co-design. And I should put my microphone closer, talking about no audio. Thank you. So in terms of panel members, what are some of the really critical elements of co-design?
It has to be authentic. I think we've probably all been in those situations where we get handed a document and here's the 3 options and you tell us which option you want, and that's not co-design, that's consultation at best, maybe feedback. Or there might be the sort of situation we've also seen where, you have 50 people online for an hour, here's a solution, are you happy with it? That's not co-design either. So it's got to be genuine and authentic. It can be about, we've come to this solution but we're not sure how to get there, how do we get there? You can co-design that process, or it might actually be about co-designing the solution itself and then working out how to get there. So it really does have to be authentic. It has to be accountable. to everyone that's involved in that co-design process. So how much influence are they really going to have on that outcome? And be honest and upfront right at the start, because you might only be co-designing one aspect of an overall thing. So people need to know that, and they need to know why they're only involved in that section. And it could simply be because there's other things that are policies or procedures or legislative requirements that can't impact on other parts of that co-design. So it's about being accountable to the people that you're engaging in your co-design process. And that's also about closing the loop. So once you've done your co-design, once you've ended up with whatever it is you're co-designing, is then feeding back to everyone and going, well, here it is, this is why, this is how it is, and making sure that loop is closed at the end.
Look, it's really important to have the same and common language so that you're not talking at cross purposes. And so if we have a look at the aged care sector, at the moment the recipients and the deliverers are at cross purposes. We don't have the same common language. We don't understand. We look at the numbers. We are quite capable of reading the numbers and doing the maths. 400,000 people in care, $30 billion. Do the maths on that. What's that a per head cost? So why am I being asked to pay more? Those sorts of discussions and dialogues are the things that we've got to have, because we don't know what we don't know. And you don't know what we don't know because you know what you know. So it's really getting that together so that we are then understanding where we are each coming from, then clearly defines where the differences might be, which then points our way to what we have to resolve so that we are on the same page. We may not agree, but we will understand where each other is coming from, which then you can create solutions that take a bit of both and may not be 100% satisfactory to all, but will not be totally and utterly alienating and disappointing to one. So it's really, and it's a difficult exercise because everybody has to move, everybody has to shift. And that's really, really important, because it's the only way you can grow. If you just stay there, you learn nothing, you do nothing. But if you talk, you show, and you let people walk in your shoes, then you start to get a window and an understanding as to how you can go forward. So just a simple thing like that, that's scary. You send your partner to hospital and he doesn't come home. That is scary. And it's no use being just told, well, that's it, get over it. We're human beings, we're not going over that. We really need people to hold our hand, to help us, to understand our fears, to understand our concerns, and to walk with us as we try to make sure that the person that we love the most in the world is being treated fairly, properly, and not being abused.
Thank you.
And I think just picking up on that, around that being inclusive and supportive, I think sometimes that people look at co-design and they pick the very capable older people that can answer the questions, speak English, have a high education background. And I've co-designed with this group, but there's this huge group over here that hasn't been engaged in any way, shape or manner. And I think co-design is hard. It's really hard, and it involves time and resources. But you don't want just that group of voices. You want the voices of the most vulnerable, because we say it so often, you get it right for them, you'll get it right for everybody. So it is about having interpreters. It is about supported decision making. It is about engaging technology or other ways of assisting people to participate in your co-design process. And it is time. It's a lot of time. And particularly if you may be working with people living with dementia, and getting their feedback, because often we just dismiss it, but you can get feedback, but it's going to take just a lot more time, a lot more patience, and maybe you've got a deadline, but maybe that deadline needs to be adjusted, because if you really want to do true co-design with the people that you're providing services to, whether it's residential or home care or CHSP or any other type of aged care service, you've got to give them the time and resources to be able to do it.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of challenges you've mentioned, and resource intensive, as well as a commitment to the process and to be authentic and value the deliverables of the groups and the people that you work with. What are some ways for say the audience that could help them to advocate for using co-design methodology in their practice?
Look, the best thing is that it usually works. Yeah, and that overrides everything, because you can spend hours and hours, days, years, months doing stuff that doesn't work, and then you have to start again. But if you co-design, you've got things that will work. Yes, it is labour intensive, it's time intensive, it's emotional, and it's all of those things, but we're in a human industry. Those things exist. If you're in a school, that's a human industry. Those things exist. And they exist at this end of our lives as well. We are still people. We still have aspirations, desires, wants, needs, all sorts of things that we don't want to be widgets or throughputs. We want to be partners in our care. And we can moderate the things that we ask for if we understand the limitations. So it is really, really important that we have that dialogue so that we can get the best for both of us, for the people in care and the people delivering the service. Because we don't want a frustrated service delivery, and we certainly don't want disgruntled people in care. We've really got to make sure that the Aged Care Royal Commission never, ever, ever comes back with the kinds of things that it exposed the last time we did that. We cannot afford to have people treated like that in any way. The people delivering the services, in a lot of instances, left because they were horrified the way that people that they cared about were treated. And people who had put their loved ones into care were equally horrified to find out how they were being treated. And I know that this is a long process and a difficult process, but it is a worthwhile process, because at the end of your life, you have contributed an enormous amount through your life. You are a whole person. You have all sorts of interesting things that you can still contribute if people are prepared to allow you to be a human being and make those contributions. And co-design will absolutely pull those things out. Little things like I'm a night showerer or I'm a morning showerer. How can we manage that? What do we need to put in place? And it might mean I have to shower at lunchtime. The sorts of things that you can do around working together rather than imposition.
And I think we've heard examples at a micro level and also at a macro level where we're looking at influencing around policies and decision making at a government level. I'm going to pause to check in with the audience, because this is a panel and we're wanting to co-design the session with our colleagues that are in the room. Are there any specific questions or challenges or statements or even reflections you'd like to add to the conversation here today? We're not that frightening.
I am.
Oh, yes.
Sorry. Look, I'm 74 years old. I'm on borrowed time here. I know that you don't always win, but if you get a bit, that's a step in the right direction. And I think everybody that gets to our stage of life and older, I mean, you get crankier, you get grumpy because, you're sick of being dissed or treated like you're a fool. But if we have those respectful conversations where you're treated with dignity, everybody knows they can't get 100%. And unless you've been living under a rock or you're a multi-bunzillionaire and you don't care, you will never, ever get everything you want. But you don't want to feel dissed. And that's the most important thing. And that's what co-design will do. It stops people feeling that they are dissed. I have to have a shower in the morning because look at all of these things here. You know why you're being imposed upon. And those things always work.
Yeah, I was going to pick up. It's about the transparency of exactly what can be achieved and how and who, and not setting expectations that can't be met. So again, it's that, authenticity and that transparency and accountability to the people in that co-design process, whether it's one-on-one or group, that you may want all this, but we can only reach this. So, yeah.
There was another conversation starter at the back.
It is, and it's also more empowering. I mean, we are a cohort. There's a whole mob of old people, and you're told baby boomers are, ruling the roost. The reality is it's the next generation who outnumber us right now, so that there's more of them coming through. That's a lobby. If we can have a joint dialogue about cost, about needs, about treatment, about design, about all of these things, you've got a lobby group that's going to back you. Not be fragmented and having they conversations. Oh, they're doing that, them are doing that. It's we. This is us, our care, our service. We want to build partnerships in that so that we're on the same plane. I mean, we're really concerned as baby boomers that we're seen as being money-grubby, wealthy people. The reality is that we are not. The only asset we really have is our own home. There's wealthy people who are self-funded retirees, but 85% of people over the age of 67 are on a pension of some shape, form or description. We're not talking about wealthy people here. And it's that understanding, it's that working together to understand that, co-payment sounds great, but what are we going to co-pay with? It's 85% of our pension disappears already. There's not a lot left over. So how do we then join forces rather than be them and using to say, you know what, Albo, you're going to have to dig your hand in a bit deeper. But you know what, providers, you're going to have a look at how much you're giving to your shareholders, about how much you're transferring out in cost shifting and all of those things. We've got to have that as an honest conversation because all of us are taxpayers, and unless you intend to do something really silly, you're all going to get old. And you're all going to need what we are currently talking about. And I want for you what I want for me, which is the best I can possibly have. And that's a conversation that we need to be continually having.
And that process, the respectful process, is definitely something that underpins and allows us to have those conversations respectfully and with authenticity. Any other conversations?
Yep, so you've got a lot of, so on the consumer side, but also in the general side, you've got a lot of peak bodies that work with diverse groups. I mean, they're excellent sources of information and resources for how to engage with various diversity groups, and also a great way to sort of test out methodologies. We want to do this. We're thinking of, doing plain English and maybe having an interpreter and maybe this. What do you think? Do you think that will work? These are the people in our service. These are the languages they speak. So it's actually using the organisations that are out there with all this knowledge and skills and expertise and drawing on them, on what they think, or even bringing them in to help with the process, because they'll have those connections within those communities to help that process. And that can be also for, people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness in your service. There's services you can speak to and go, what's the best way of us to engage with this particular cohort in our group? The language might need to be simpler, it might need to be rougher, it might need to be, you don't ask these questions, you ask these questions. So it's actually using the knowledge of the variety of organisations that are out there that have it all, that are holding it all. It's also talking to your workers and older people about how they'd like to be engaged, like what's going to work best for you, and what's the best process we can do that's going to help you to be part of this co-design process. Obviously not calling it necessarily co-design because not necessarily language. We often talk about it as collaboration. We're working collaboratively to develop something. But, working out what the language is of the group that you're going to work with and what would be most appropriate and most engaging for them. And that can come directly from them, can come from their families, can come from carers, partners, others in the community. But, yeah, I think really draw on who you have and then all those resources of all these organisations that can give you all those tips about the best way to engage with those particular groups, whatever they are.
You mentioned around capability of in co-design. It's certainly a skill and it's a process. Are there specific resources that you'd recommend, or that is there ways at which you could suggest people might be able to upskill in the area of co-design?
Prompting our own things. So as I said, we did develop this checklist with the Australian Association of Gerontology and another organisation called CollabForge. It is targeted very much at older people, but certainly would be a great resource if you're going to do co-design, so you can check off, am I doing all these things that older people are going to look for when they're doing co-design? We also put a report together on how we developed that document. So it was a big co-design process as a workshop, probably half a day, and then lots and lots of follow-up. I did bring this with me. There is this fantastic resource called Collaboration Design, and this was the company, CollabForge was the organisation we called in to do the training in co-design for our organisation, and they did a really good job. And they're who we worked with in developing those resources as well. So there is lots of tools out there, and I guess it's sort of just looking for what's going to work for you and your situation and your particular design, and then looking at how you can then implement that. Because some things will be so complex, it's like, no, that's just not going to work for us. But if you can find some of the more simpler tools, and as I said, you know, that checklist, that just gives you that starting process and gets you off. So there is a lot of resources, and I know it's hard to sometimes decide which is a good resource or not, but I think as you get to know it and work through it, you'll kind of go, yeah, that maybe we don't need all of that, we'll just take these bits. So, yeah.
Thanks, Sam. We've got a couple of minutes, half an hour seems to have disappeared. Are there any final questions, comments, reflections?
I just have a comment and insight I would like to know. Sometimes we run into this difficulty of cultural shift when it comes to leadership and transformation. Co-design takes up a lot of resource and effort, but it's worth it. But how to achieve it with that kind of cultural shift? How can you do something or upskill or motivate leadership to achieve that?
I guess, yeah, it's about selling the benefit, because if you have your workforce and your older people got buy-in to that outcome, then that's a far better outcome for the organisations and for the leadership. Like, do they want something that's everyone is happy with and has contributed to and are interested in moving forward, or do they want pushback and angst and anger? So I think it's about selling the benefit of having everyone that's bought into that solution, and that it's actually a better benefit for everyone overall.
And if you've got leadership blockage who are saying, hell no, we won't go, refer to Bridget, who was on earlier, because she's got a couple of resources that you can shift that attitude.
Jennifer, who you saw on the screen, who was the wife of Richard, who was going into the facility, after going through the co-design process, she shared with us that she was listened to, Richard was listened to, people were interested in what she had to say. So the next time she felt she had something to say, she felt very comfortable to be able to do that. So it's not just the co-design process of right now, it's actually the concept of the confidence to continue to have a voice in your care and your husband's care. So that's in terms of embedding, I think, yes, there's the process, but then it's through that process people learn to do co-design as business as usual, and our residents and our partners in care also learn that their voice is valued and should be elevated and listened to. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you.